Welcome to Tigrai Media House. My name is Meliti Berhane-Meskel. It has been 19 months since the war on Tigray began, and the Ethiopian government is still holding more than 7 million Tigrayans hostage with a clenched jaw, clenched tight. There's been only a trickle of food that has gotten into the region. There's still no running water, no medicine, no banking services, no electricity, no basic public services getting into the region. For 19 months, Tigrayans have been in a virtual jail, unable to reach their families. And when news does creep out occasionally, it's dark and it's devastating and it's full of despair. All we hear about is the lack of medicine, people dying from lack of insulin, for example, the painful deaths caused by starvation. The most recent news is that Eider Referral Hospital is going to shut its doors. Eider Hospital in Mekelle was one of the few that gave just a glimmer of hope for people who need help, a one place that they could go and potentially survive what's happening to them. Eider has been telling us that they're running out of food. They ran out of gloves. They've run out of medicine. They have no fuel. They have no electricity. Doctors are passing out. Their children have signs of starvation. These are the children of doctors and nurses, the caretakers of people in Tigray. And now we hear that Eider Referral Hospital may shut its doors. Much has been said about the world's failure in stopping the Tigray genocide. We've talked a lot about the political failure. An area that hasn't gotten as much attention or as much as it should is the religious side of this conversation. Where are the religious leaders in this conversation? Where is the moral voice against rape? Where is the moral voice against murder? Where are our religious leaders in talking about starvation and worse? Today's guest is Beti Eyasu. Really excited to have you on the show today, Beti. Thank you for being here. She had an opportunity to confront the Archbishop of Ethiopia's Addis Ababa Archdiocese, Berhane Eyasu Demarau Cardinal Surafil. He was in Sydney, Australia, and Beti was able to ask him a few questions. Thank you, Beti, for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Melita.
Yes. So first of all, tell us a little bit about you. Tell us where you live and a little bit about how you've been impacted over the past 19 months.
Right. My name is Beti Eyasu. I am from Australia, Sydney. I am part of the Sydney Tigray community as well as the youth community. Born and raised in Tigray. So pretty much my whole family, majority of my family are in Tigray. My childhood friends, a lot of people that are very important to me, these past 19 months will just keep going on if I talk about how it impacted me, but it did impact every inch of my life, I would say. Mm-hmm. I've seen my family here in Australia get impacted by it. I've seen them break down because of the news that were coming out. I've seen my friends go through it here in Australia as well as back home, So I don't think I can be very specific in how it affected me, but it did psychologically, physically. We just went through a lot. Me and you know the news that we heard. Never in my life I thought I would witness such things, not through words, not through news, but through videos, these horrific atrocities, these news that came out from the women, the witnesses, and are people getting this? I'm going to send a disclaimer before I say all this because it's very disturbing to hear. We've been hearing it for the past 19 months, but seeing our people getting thrown off a cliff, seeing young people getting burned alive, these are the things I just never thought it would happen to my people. I can't even stand seeing it happen for other people as well, just as a human, right? So before I say too much, I'm just going to say it did impact every inch of my life. I could just summarize it as that.
You're right. I think it's shocking the way that this genocide is being documented almost in real time, and we're watching it happen, which is also really shocking. It's not over, and we're talking about what people told us. We're actually seeing the video, and it is really shocking. So you've been really active in fighting to end the Tigray genocide. Tell me about your activism and how you've been working, and then we'll get to this specific situation.
Um, so as a part of the community, I've been involved in that as well. If you ask me what I've done so far, I'm just gonna say not enough. Not enough has been done yet. But the least I've done is at least stand with my people. The least I've done is stand against these atrocities. The least I've done is not stand with these genociding entities, you know. That's what I can say. I'm also involved in a couple of organizations at the moment that are working towards helping Tigray, such as there is Hedrona organization and the Nasabawian working to stop malnutrition in Tigray on kids and mothers. These are the two organizations I'm working with currently, as well as the social media advocating. Not so much of it, but you know, I'm trying my best. Yeah.
Were you active in these different organizations pre-war, or did your entire focus shift when the war on Tigray started?
So these are organizations that started after the war. So, well, initially I started with DW Tagar Foundation, if you've heard of it. They used to send aid to Sudan and all that. But currently it's just those two. My whole life had to shift to this because our people have nothing. And pretty much I can say since the international community failed them, at least we are who they can rely on. So I just all of us as Tagaro, I would say that's where we had to refocus and just, you know, put all attention to this. So these are organizations I joined after the war.
And it is your generation that has really put Tigray on the map and that has made this genocide that was happening in the dark, brought it to light. So there, you deserve a lot of credit for that. So I want to talk about the religious, the confrontation, I guess, that you had. You know, Catholics don't make up a big percentage of the Ethiopian community. I mean, I think it's less than 1%. But in general, religion plays a huge role in Ethiopia. At least that was the impression that many of us had. I mean, it's anywhere from 50 to 60% Christian, predominantly Orthodox Christian, anywhere from 30 to 40% Muslim. And we've got other faiths as well that are intermixed. There are always religious holidays happening. You know, people are constantly fasting. The Ark of the Covenant is in Aksum. St. Mary's Church was the site of a gruesome massacre where thousands of people were killed. I mean, it's just Ethiopia is so religious, or comes across so religious, that even people have crosses on their faces, you know, tattooed on their faces. I mean, to that extent. And yet we see a country that is slaughtering Tigrayans. And like you said, throwing people off of cliffs. I mean, just the worst and the most evil of society is happening in Ethiopia. We saw people burned alive, and people making jokes about, you know, would this be good with injera or with bread, or, you know, just really just disturbing things that you wouldn't expect in a country that presents itself to be so religious. So you found yourself in a situation to confront a very powerful man. And when I say that, religious leaders in Ethiopia, in my opinion, can be more powerful than even politicians can be. How did this moment, set the scene for us, and then we're going to show the clip, but set the scene for us. Where were you and what was going on around you? There was a lot happening.
So from the start, me and my youth community heard that the Cardinal was going to be in Sydney. So we had to attend and see for ourselves, witness for ourselves what's going to happen inside the ceremony, and what will be said regarding what's happening. You know, if not mentioning the genocide, at least what's happening, you know, the war. Respectfully, we and my youth community, as you've seen it, and even inside the ceremony, we attended, you know, we didn't disturb anything. We did attend the ceremony, and we heard the Cardinal say a few things about Ethiopia, you know, Ethiopia being a nation, a country that respects human lives. Ethiopia being not the first country, but Ethiopia being, you know, one of the ancient countries that accepted Christianity. which is through Aksum, but these people are under a blockade, under a genocide. So for me, he was putting an image out there, portraying Ethiopia as, this peaceful country, very historical country. It was just very hard for us. We had to obviously respect the ceremony, respect the believers inside there, but it was very hard for us. It was very hard because we had to witness it, firsthand, our people being ignored, like our people's pain being minimized, their sufferings being minimized. So it was very hard, but we waited until the end of the ceremony, obviously. And we saw him, greeting other believers that were there. So we did approach him. There were Australians around us. We approached him and asked these few questions. The least we expected, not so much of it. Personally, I wouldn't say I had so much hope, but at least what I expected was a recognition. And all he tried to do was being defensive, saying, it's not only Tigray, there is suffering in this region as well. Saying that is not trying to acknowledge the suffering of other regions, but trying to say, whatever is happening in Tigray is happening everywhere. So it's kind of okay. That was what I understood from it. Because if I'm talking about the people of Tigray, what you could do is recognize their suffering, not compare it to someone else's. Because we are all obviously suffering, but the blockade is on Tigray, the genocide is on Tigray, and we need just to recognize it as that. He also, as I said, there was Australians around us. So he also said, them having the Ethiopian Catholic Church having good relationship with the Tigray Catholic Church, the Tigray Catholic Church. We know the Euro people, who are, to my knowledge, majority followers of the Catholic religion. Their lands have been occupied by Eritrean troops. I don't know what their state could be. This is very hard for them. I would not. There is no medical aid reaching them. There is no food reaching them. So these people of the same religion to him were even ignored, saying we're in good relations with the Tigray Catholic Church is trying to portray to those other Australians that were hearing us that we're all good. What you're saying is, nonsense. We were just ignored pretty much, and we couldn't have that. So we just had to use the opportunity to voice, to our capacity, voice their pain and suffering.
Wow. I'm gonna read a little. There's a letter that came from the Catholic Church in Tigray, and I'm going to read that in just a little bit later in the show. Just a little paragraph from his letter, because Abune Tesfa Selassie has been trying to get the word out about the despair in Tigray and begging the greater global, certainly Catholic family, but Christian family in general, pleading for help, and has gotten no response. But you're right, the Irob community is right there on the border, and they're often the first attacked when there is any kind of issue with Eritrea. And so they've been just devastated in this genocide. Let's show the clip of your conversation with the Cardinal.
I'm going to ask why there wasn't much coverage on the Tigray genocide, because there is a genocide happening in the Tigray region right now. But as Christians, as a father of God, we haven't seen you say much. You've just covered it up as a conflict. It's not a conflict. There is a genocide in the Tigray region. We didn't say anything in the church because we have respect for the Catholic religion. We're not here to destruct anything. But with all due respect, this is not something to minimize. There is no communication in the Tigray region. You yourself and other religion leaders bless the war in Tigray. This is not what we expected, but all religion leaders in the Ethiopia, you know yourself, bless the religion and bless the Ethiopian troops and the Eritrean troops to enter Tigray. We have a picture of you and ending with the Ethiopian military. I'm not done yet. Thank you so much. I can have that. I respect that. I respect that. But we just want you to know, we want you to pray for the people of Tigray. We don't want to minimize their pain because they are going through a genocide. There is no medical aid. There is no food. You saying that is minimizing the pain because the blockade is on Tigray, not on Amhara, no other regions. Tigray is blocked by the Ethiopian government.
Thank you for sharing, and I ask you now to just also share.
We have our
we
own
pray for all people,
including the bishop in Tigray. We have missionaries there, Catholic missions.
The Tigray Catholic ties from the Ethiopian.
And Caritas Internationalis from Australia.
Can I just mention the Tigray Catholic Church cut ties from the Ethiopian Catholic Church? Why is that? They have. Go search it yourself. The Tigray Catholic Church cut ties from the Ethiopian Catholic Church. Go search it yourself and see why it is. See why it is. See why it is.
Wow. I know your heart was racing in that moment, trying to get it all out. I want to repeat something you said. You said, with all due respect, this is not something to minimize. There's no communication to Tigray. You yourself and other religious leaders blessed this war. This is not what we expected. That's really powerful. How did you feel in that moment? Did anyone say anything around you? I know there were a lot of Australians in the area. Did anyone say anything to you afterwards or even in that moment? Or, I mean, just how were you feeling in that moment?
I honestly don't know how I even did that, but it was very heartbreaking. I had to, if I'm being honest, after I had that interaction, I just broke down because it was very hard. I am comfortably living here, right, as compared to my people. But if they're ignoring me like this, imagine the people of Tigray, right? So that was very hard for me. After I finished that conversation, it was really hard. Well, I had my people around me, supporting me, this community, but it was really tough. Yeah.
Wow. You said, if they're ignoring me like this, imagine the people in Tigray. That's really painful. This moment was powerful for me. And it was why I wanted to have this conversation with you, because everyone has seen that video now, but I wanted to learn a little bit more about why you did what you did. And it's powerful because we've been trying to reason our way out of this war. We've been saying things like, people need to eat. There's no food. The farms have been burned. People need food. We're having this very logical conversation, or at least we're trying to have a very logical conversation. And that's not working. But what you did, you were trying to appeal to the morality. You were talking to someone who should understand and speak that language with you. And yet it seemed like he didn't understand. He couldn't hear what you were saying. It's, the Bible, I mean, literally the Bible says, thou shalt not kill. The Bible literally says it. If you want to go, Old Testament, if you want to go New Testament, it says, if people are hungry, feed them. I mean, all of this is very clear. What are your thoughts on like the moral fiber of Ethiopia, and just how this has this challenged your beliefs? Talk to me about that a little bit. And also, I'm going to be honest. I considered Ethiopia to be one of the most spiritual places on earth until now. And now I've questioned a lot of that. It has made me question a lot about my faith. Tell me a little bit about how you see that.
Before I go into that, let me just start with the facts, right? When I approached the Cardinal, saying that it was actually a video, not even a picture, of him showing his support to the ANDF. If you remember, it was 10-15 days into the war is where everyone, in support of Abiy Ahmed went out and put their hands on their chest and said, we stand with the ANDF. The Cardinal, not at the moment, but was a part of, a member of the Ethiopian Reconciliation Commission. So the irony of it is just baffling, because these are people who were selected, from different religions and positions, professions, to preach peace, is what I would say, in summary anyway. But they failed to do that. In fact, they went out of their way and supported a defense force that is already committing crimes in Tigray, upon the people that you consider are yours, the morality of it, this religion leaders, we expected them to have high moral ground. You would anyway. They are there to guide you, to lead you through such situations or in everyday life. In fact, majority of them in Ethiopia failed to do this. This is in every religion, right? Whether it is Orthodox, Catholic, the Protestant, and Muslim. Taking pictures with a defense force that did all the crimes I mentioned before, right? It doesn't feel nice to say it every time, so that's why I just try not to say it. Knowing that they committed all these crimes, knowing that they destroyed mosques, knowing that they killed monks, knowing that they killed all these ancient, historical, culturally significant, history-wise significant, and religion-wise significant places. They massacred believers, the Aksum massacre. All these stories were out, and these people decided to still stand with the government. They still decided not even forget about what happened in the past. When I had the interaction with the cardinal, that's what he was trying to do, right? Deny what's happening, try to cover what's happening. So I experienced it firsthand from that individual. So how do I even say this? It's just beyond, I'm lost for words, because as you said earlier, we thought Ethiopia was this, very spiritual land, spiritual nation. But all I see is just people in nice gowns, people holding crosses, people holding Bibles in church preaching, but are not living it. They're not living what they're preaching, right? If you're going to go at church and preach hate towards an ethnic group, if you're going to go to church and say words that incite a genocide, what is the position you have as a religious leader? For me, they're just the respect that you gain. For me, like any religious leaders, it could be from any religion, right? I do give respect as a human. I would give them respect, and I would honor them for the position they have. But that comes with what they do. It's not because you're a cardinal. It's not because you're a priest, a bishop. What you're wearing, I know culturally for us, it's very intimidating to confront such a person. Mostly, I would say we would prefer to stay quiet because it's very intimidating. But we had to do what we had to do because these people failed to be those religious leaders. These people failed to be a guidance of the people. In fact, if you've seen so many videos, I'm going to mention an example of when Abuna Matthias released that video recognizing the pain and suffering of the Tigray people. The secretary of the synod, what he did was he came out and said, whatever the Abuna Matthias said doesn't represent our church. What Abuna Matthias said was the suffering of people shouldn't happen, destruction of church, what happened in Aksum shouldn't have happened. These people went out and history just writes itself. They went out and said that doesn't represent us. So what kind of church are people following? What kind of leaders are people following while hearing it for themselves?
It's very shocking. It's very shocking.
It's shocking.
Without action, those are just words in a book, regardless of which book you're holding. There has to be an action behind it. Absolutely. And Abuna Matthias is a brave person, a brave messenger of God. He's literally the Pope of Ethiopia, who is on house arrest. But he still continues to speak up every opportunity he gets. We've seen video of people taking the mic from him because they don't want him to speak. But this is literally a messenger of God. You're silencing a messenger of God. Just imagine that, silencing the word of God. Someone who is saying no to war, someone who is saying people are suffering, we should help them. It is. When you think it can't get any worse, it does. I want to ask you a question. When people think about Christianity in particular, they tend to focus on the forgiveness stories, especially in times of tragedy. And in that way, Christianity has been used to oppress communities, because the lesson that we often get from people who are manipulating the word is you should always forgive. You should turn the other cheek. But there are plenty of examples where Jesus, if that's what you believe, did not turn the other cheek. He's turned over a table or two to prove his point. What are your thoughts on that, righteous anger that when you see something wrong that needs to be changed? Talk about that a little bit.
Starting with the basics, right? For me as an individual to forgive you, you first have to recognize what I went through. You have to recognize my pain first. That's what happens. If we just cover it up, there's no reason it wouldn't happen again, right? Same way that Jesus, got angry at these individuals that used his worship place, God's worship place, as shop and market for their businesses. These religion leaders in Ethiopia are using their churches as a political ground to encourage a genocide, to normalize a genocide, right? We've seen them in, I think it was Epiphany Timkat in Ethiopia. They said, oh, these people, like whatever happened to us, it's just everyone's cheering. It's just so normalized. Like that shows you, if religious leaders can normalize it like that, the people that follow them, like what kind of image are you sending? This is why the hate has been so gross, pretty much, I would say.
Let's talk about why do you think religious leaders are missing from this conversation? We've obviously heard from the Tigrayan religious leaders. We've heard from Abuna Matias. We've heard from, I want to read really quick, just a little excerpt from a letter, because there have been several letters that have come from the Catholic Church, specifically out of Adigrat. And I just want to read one paragraph because I think it's so powerful and speaks to the situation. But here he says, he's talking about, this is Abune Tesfasalase Medhin, and he's talking about the blockade. And he says, we perceive that the suspension has been done without the due consideration to the immense humanitarian aid needs in the region. Consequently, because the access to the essential services like electricity and banking, telecommunications, transport, and health facilities have been denied, the people in Tigray, especially IDPs, returnees, and those who are affected most due to the impact of the war, have run out of food, basic services and medicine, potable water, shelter. Hence, it is day-to-day reality to see human suffering, starvation, and lack of medicine to preventable diseases. Besides the current situation on the ground, it shows that any delay by days in responding to the humanitarian needs would end in catastrophic famine and deaths of millions of people in Tigray. It's a really long, powerful letter. And we've seen the Pope respond for peace. He's called for peace in Ethiopia, but that's kind of a general thing that we've gotten from him. And we've heard that from so many different people. It feels like these messages fall on deaf ears. What is your message to Cardinal Beti Eyasu, to the Pope, to the evangelicals of the world, to all of these religious leaders who claim that there is one Christian family, but yet they fail to either take a stance or help end this war?
What I would say is the energy that they had, when the war started, the energy that they had to incite a genocide, the energy they had to incite hateful speeches, I would say, be so outraged that you stop this genocide. Be as outraged that you stop this blockade. Because we've seen their support for the war. We've seen their support and covering up for the government. So I would say if they want to be, because I've seen statements, from the Cardinal as well recently that said, they called for peace. But again, be so outraged, right? Work so hard that you stop this genocide, because I know they're that powerful. Because if you're powerful enough to entertain a genocide on a minority group, I think you're powerful enough to stop it as well. So if there is hope there, as a religious leader, if we can see you any different than an individual that help these atrocities, an individual that encouraged these atrocities, if you want us to see you any different than that, then I would say they have all the power, all the religion leaders, by the way, they have all the power to stand against this. They have all the power to stand a government that's doing this upon their people.
Absolutely. Thank you for your strong words. Thank you for being unafraid. It is 19 months, and I will talk about Christians particularly because I'm a Christian. We have failed the Christian leaders have not responded. If we are one body in Christ, then the heart is bleeding and no one is responding. This is, and that goes honestly for anyone in any religion. If you believe in God or you believe in the human family, then we should be responding and reacting to this. And the lack of response is just shameful. Like I said earlier, what are words in a book if you cannot put them to practice? So thank you, Beti. Thank you for being courageous. And thank you for being an example of how a Christian should behave and act. So thank you. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me, Melita. Thank you.